National Economic Summit, a yearly gathering of government representatives and high-level private sector leaders, is on again for the 29th edition. It's a platform to dialogue on Nigeria's economic management. This year's edition, with the theme, Pathways to Sustainable Economic Transformation and Inclusion, comes at a time the nation grapples with numerous challenges and the need for urgent reforms. Representatives of the National Economic Summit Group highlight necessary steps to kickstart Nigeria's journey to economic transformation.
A macroeconomic stabilization program supported by an aggressively scaled national security effort to halt all forms of syndicated and organized crime around crude oil and solid minerals.
Without a willing government at the center of the events, this will not be possible. Today, Mr. President, you sit at the helm of affairs as a willing reformer, sir, and we believe that our nation can get to a $4 trillion economy by the year 2035.
The event was declared open by President Bola Tinubu, who acknowledged the economic challenges currently faced by Nigerians. He outlines the plans by his administration to bring a solution to these challenges.
Consistent with our commitment to enshrine fairness and the rule of law in our country, this government will uphold the sanctity of every legitimate contract, specifically as it relates to foreign exchange obligations of the government. All the forward contracts that the government has entered into will be honored. The framework has been put in place to ensure that these obligations are met in due course. My government is not blind to the challenges several of you are facing in the financial markets. I can only allay these concerns by revealing that we have a good line of sight for the additional foreign exchange liquidity that is required to restore market confidence. And we are going to do that. I would like to charge you, the captains of industry here present, to commit yourself and redouble your effort to our vision of a renewed hope.
Relatedly, the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu, says the ministry has commenced the process of the review of the National Development Plan.
We are faithfully committed to the implementation of plans, including the Agenda 2050, because it is an irreducible minimum of commitment to some consensus by all, especially in a federal setup like Nigeria, which you have always believed, but which you have always led that should be recognized as such.
A panel session follows where speakers deliberate on issues like foreign exchange, government's plan for investment and growth, food security, amongst others. The National Economic Summit, organized in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, through impactful dialogue, seeks to inspire confidence in the Nigerian economy to drive job creation and fulfill Nigeria's economic potential on the global stage. Victoria Longjohn for Channels Television News.
Yeah, welcome back. So that is what we're focusing on. We're starting with here today on Sunrise today, and those two gentlemen are here with us in the studio. Dr. Fashua, Special Advisor to the President on Economic Affairs, Office of the Vice President, Economist, and also Bongo Aide, Professor of Economics at Lagos Business School and Chairman, Editorial Subcommittee of Nigeria NES 29. That's Nigeria Economic Summit 29. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thanks for having me.
Prof, several narratives have come through already from the NESG, and rightly so, as a result of the persons who spoke yesterday. And then, of course, several thoughts in the minds of the people, businesses, several people wondering, okay, where is this headed? What do we do? It might be early days yet because NESG is still going on. So what can you tell us that at the end of the day, because, I mean, this is crucial. NESG coming up at this time has always been important, but this time we know the situation with the economy. So many will be looking to the NESG and all of those who are attending for some sort of direction. So what would you tell us that, look, what are you trying to achieve? What should we expect from the summit this time?
Well, the summit has become an institutionalized annual event for the Nigerian economy, which is a public-private sector dialogue on economy, foster sustainable, economic, social development. So, to that respect, that's a very great achievement so far. So, in this particular summit, it's coming at a very auspicious time, in the sense that we are in a very critical period. We call it an inflection point. So we've had the first administration, and this is the first summit for the new administration, and an opportunity for them actually to, well, let me use that balance, to market themselves to not just the private sector audience, the corporate players, but also the nation and in global community, because you have all the big investment banks attending the summit. So they were listening to the sound bites. So this is, about setting the agenda, the real agenda, economic agenda for the administration. It's not that the economic summit is about to do that, but to collect the views and what people think should be done to get the economy moving, both in the immediate, short and long term. So that's what the summit is all about, and I think it's all taken off on a very good note. So the president's speech yesterday actually struck the right notes, and you could get that from the applause that he got. But, listening to people who came to the summit, because we are still compiling the reports, at the end of the day, we're going to come out with a green book, which will be, the NESG's contribution to the government in terms of policy, direction, and all of that, the key policy anchors that will kickstart the economy. Because the challenge that we have right now is that of productivity. So the president actually, picked off the right points. But then when his key ministers came to speak, I mean, I'm speaking from what I heard from the audience. So most people were not really confident that really, they couldn't find that complementarity between what the president said and what the key ministers, because the president, was very, you could see that there is that ambitious target. So to grow an economy of 4 trillion in 4 years, or even 5 trillion in 4 years. So $1 trillion per year. That is massive. And then the next thing you need to ask is, where are we? And then what are the necessary drivers that will get us there? Because that's what people wanted to hear. So you want to get 10 million Nigerians out of poverty each year, or something like that, and then you want to grow the economy by double digits. So we want to know what monetary policy is going to look like, and that's what people expected to hear from the central bank governor. So, but I'm not sure that soundbite came the way people wanted it, and a lot of people were asking questions. So, but at the end of the day, the important thing is that people know. A lot of views regarding what needs to be done and how government should sequence policies, are coming up. So we see how that goes at the end of the day.
Well, Mr. Fashua, almost like football, everybody's a coach. So we all know what to do. But in this case, too, it's a typology because everybody feels the crunch with the economy, whichever way you look at it. So connecting the dots in terms of what the president's policy thoughts, his mindset, where his head is, and then his lieutenants in terms of how they key in.
Very interesting, and I think I was there for most of the day yesterday as well. The president came with very bold, ambitious goals, and I think it's actually shifting the goals to the right further, even beyond the campaigns. Because, part of the campaign was $1 trillion economy by 2026 or thereabouts. And he's saying that, look, we can even do better than that, And the idea of $3 trillion economy in 10 years. He's saying that, look, we can take it to 4 trillion. And I mean, those are very, very ambitious goals anyway. So, and I think that now, and that's what it takes to be a leader. And one of the key things in leadership is visioning and risk-taking in calculated manner. Those are the things that separate leadership from just being a manager. And so his lieutenants, too. I was in a session on the Congress between the fiscal and monetary policy at which the new central bank governor was there. And of course, yesterday was his first outing since he became the central bank governor, as he said, you know. And he also actually got bitten by the bug, because he was telling us that in his regime, number one, clear separation of duties, that what they don't need to be doing in central bank, they will not do it, they won't touch it. However, that they're going to guard their own territory also very jealously in terms of, you know, wrestling down inflation. He's all about wrestling down inflation. But he said something that was also very, very interesting. He said that, you know, the idea that in the foreign exchange market, what they're coming up with, that everybody will be clear about the rules of that market. There won't be an amorphous thing where anybody just plays. And I think what I got from that was, you know, that in time and very soon also, the black market, which people try to call parallel market, and when you call it parallel market, it suggests a market that's at par with the official market. We know what challenges are taking a lot of people to the black market, but still, like the Minister of Finance said yesterday, and coordinating minister for the Economist, he said, what's going on is a case of the tail wagging the dog. And I've also said that quite a while, I mean, for so many times as well. The tail wagging the dog, the black market dictating where everybody else goes to. So if somebody goes on internet now or goes on Twitter or something and say, oh, the rate of the Naira is so, you know, it's like when they used to have open outcry in the stock market. And someone is speaking to his mom, and he said, you know, yes, can you put that cell, that battery cell somewhere? And someone is listening to him, he said, cell? Whether it's battery cell or cell, everybody goes, sell. And in the same manner, you know, someone says, look, I'm about to buy something for you on my way back from work. So buy. And that's how, you know, you can drive the market in any direction that you like. So the Minister of Finance said, what they're looking at is a case where the tail will stop wagging the dog. So all that's going on now, I believe that also what the president said, and as a quote by the finance minister, that they're expecting some good inflows of almost $10 billion in the next few, he said, in a matter of weeks, not months. And I heard them say something about sovereign wealth funds that they're speaking to, some foreign portfolio investors who are also willing to come. We know that those guys are hot money anyway. You know, and they're also talking about crude oil. So they said, between crude oil proceeds, sovereign wealth funds, and I'm happy to hear that, you know, that if you're talking to a Norway sovereign wealth, so depending on the kind of deal you're working with them, Norway, Qatar, you know, UAE, Saudi Arabia, those guys are swimming in money. So if you can give them a template to show that, look, whatever you're bringing in, you're going to get it back quickly. You're going to get it back when you want, with good returns and so on. It solves a problem for us. We have liquidity in the market. And, you know, but as Professor Bongo has said, the key issue is also still productivity. Yeah. No matter how much money you're bringing, if it has to dovetail into productivity in the Nigerian market. And I probably will close by this, dovetailing into productivity for every Nigerian. So that we need to, what we call, you know, economic complexity, adding value to what we produce. But the president also mentioned those cottage industries they've talked about. He also mentioned mega cities in 6 geopolitics. I mean, but again, that's the role of leadership, you know, and I think that it was a fantastic speech, and everybody is having to align behind that speech this morning.
But part of what Prof said in terms of connecting those dots, yes, the hot monies, the portfolio investors, all of those, they'll have their role, but part of what you also highlighted in conclusion there is what we can refer to as the boots on the ground, investing here, having those manufacturing sector up and running here. That is going to be key because, yes, we can get all the dollar inflow here, but let's not also forget, have we been able to, because do we get the sense there at that summit, have we been able to plug those loopholes? I know the CBN says the rules will be there, does it mean there'll be no more round tripping? We won't have all people just get...
That's what he said.
Those are challenges that we need to be
That's
sure
what he said. You know, the nitty-gritty of how they do that is what they're going to roll. And in fact, the CBN governor said in that other meeting, you know, which was a breakout, that there's going to be an eloquent document. That's what he said. He said the one eloquent document is going to come out of the central bank that's going to lay the rules and, you know, and then, of course, sanctions are going to come. Anything like round tripping. He said, look, if you're legit, you probably won't have much to worry about. But if you're not legit, you have to worry a lot. And these guys are determined, yeah. Some will tell you that Mr. Cardoso, at 6'6" or thereabout, you know, is more like a headmaster. You know, he's a no-nonsense person. And I think, given the lessons of the recent past, you know, the delving of central bank into maybe too much of development financing and so on, almost every aspect of the economy, I think he has that advantage, that push, that impetus to act properly. You know, I'm very glad, but again, like you said, issue of productivity, our import-export profile, which I probably, if I have some time, we'll talk about later, is very, very skewed in terms of import. Taiwo Aide was also in one of the committees, and he said that what they're doing regarding the 43 items, which has been quite worrisome, okay, you removed that ban, which wasn't a ban really, but it wasn't central bank's role to do that, as they said, as they repeated yesterday. But Taiwo Aide said that working on the committee, they're looking at 1,200 items under the HS code of the custom. That's the harmonized, whatever code of the custom. You say that, you know, they need a comprehensive review to say each line-by-line item, 1,200 different items imported into Nigeria. They're looking at it, is this rate right? Should we increase the tariff or reduce the tariff? If it's an input for our industries, do we need to put much tariff on them? No, we don't. And I was very glad that at least they're doing that, but it's going to be a gradual process.
Well, I've been looking at Mr. Bongwadi. You've nodded to some of the things he said, and you've been quiet with some.
Yes.
So while it is that, yes, he's talked about the vision of the president, you did say that some of the things that the lieutenant did say didn't quite give the same level of confidence which you heard the president put out there. But I am wondering whether, you know, I mean, you guys are the experts. Your people work in both the private sector and even in government. So when a president speaks, he's not just speaking, he cannot be speaking in a vacuum. He's not speaking abstract. A number of people will say they're looking to the fundamentals. One of the key fundamentals, and I think for a number of people that has really shaken our markets, is our forex reserves. We've seen what big scandal, you know, has come out of some revelations from, I'm trying to remember the company now. JP Morgan, yeah. And we know how that has affected, you know, perception and even speculation against the Naira, against our own currency. So for you, looking at this, some people say maybe that's why, maybe the lieutenants were speaking with some more cautious optimism, not wanting to promise so much. But for you, I mean, when you listen to the president speak and listen to his lieutenant speak and look at the fundamentals on the ground, do you have faith that indeed what the president is saying is possible?
Yes. Okay, so I will also want to, you know, underscore the source of my confidence. You know, when I say yes, I have confidence in what is president said in terms of the ability to really, you know, walk the talk. Yes, we have three challenges in the economy right now. So whether it's exchange rate or inflation or even interest rates. So those are the core pillars of the central bank. Right. So when you look at this, it doesn't really, you know, inspire any investor, any sort of investor confidence. And that's the fact. And some of the speakers yesterday also alluded to that. Now we have some real issues here. Let's take infrastructure, for instance, electricity. We've got capacity in generation of up to 17,000 megawatts. But the evacuation capability that we have as today, not up to 7,000. So we still have massive electricity trapped within our system that the transmission network is not able to carry to people's homes. Now, that's a big issue, not just people's homes, even for industries. Now, that's a minor thing. We already got the generation. So some people will be interested in hearing, okay, what sort of things do we need to do to ensure that so those low-hanging fruits are optimized, because that is what we begin to set the fundamentals that you're talking about, okay? So you now see this rampage in inflation every day. So, what people expected to hear, what are the necessary things that need to happen today, okay? So that you don't wake up in the morning and you hear that the dollar is now 1,500 naira, and then the next day, and the way the exchange rate is going, that's the same way inflation is following. So we don't have price stability. An investor will be looking at all of these things and then think, okay, if I come in at this price, when I'm exiting, at what price am I exiting? And then that is actually what. And then we look at the global, from what my friend Dr. Tope said here now. If you look at the global market, you see that there is, in fact, is in the green, meaning that the U.S. market has recovered. But sometime 4 months ago, 6 months ago, people were actually predicting recession, but it didn't happen. When we had the yield curve that was reversing, but everything has actually been set right now. So you can see that the global economy is moving, strongly, especially in the United States. So investors will be looking for such, safe havens to put their money. Now, with our situation here where we have this sort of inflation, instability in prices, unpredictability, who will be willing to come in? Because there is real competition for capital. I like what he said about Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Norwegian sovereign wealth funds. Well, we don't know what that template is that the present government, the cabinet members or the key functionaries we give to these people to boost their confidence to bring money here, because that is exactly what we need. Yeah, I agree that having 10 billion come in a couple of weeks will somehow ease, the constraint that we have in the supply side, the forest market currently, which will actually help a whole lot of things. But then it's also important for us to know what are the mechanisms around that 10 billion. Is that going to be a fresh borrowing? Because we have some issues. Now, some of the vibes that some people had expected to see got this debt of this size, which is hurting us massively. Okay? So what are the things that we needed to do now to begin to manage those debts? So, but I'm sure that those will be in the larger blueprint that will be released.
Does the president's commitment, that statement about them determined to clear the backlog, does it answer some of those questions?
Of course it does, but again, that's a statement.
It's a statement. Well, Mr. Fashaw, I also noticed that when he was speaking about production, I saw you nod very vigorously about the fact that we need to go back to productivity, and I imagine by extension to production. What exactly is government's plan in this direction? Because some people will say they're not seeing government being aggressive enough in supporting producers, in supporting manufacturers, in driving cottage industries, the places where production can really happen. What exactly is government's plan here?
Oh, well, again, a lot of that came out yesterday, and I wanted to quickly comment on the issue of revenue and for example, the debt. One of the things that can begin to solve our problem, because all these problems are not going to disappear overnight anyway. And remember that every country does have its issues that they're dealing with. That's why you have government in the first place, and every country has a government. So one of the things that will begin to reduce this burden from this debt is to drive revenue. I happen to be also in the fiscal committee and tax committee. And already we've seen that without actually increasing taxes at all, most of, let's say 50% of the revenues of this country, I won't use tax because tax is just a subset, go into people's pockets. 50% or more of taxes or revenue, rent, rates, fees, fines, whatever that is due to government across the board, national, subnational, go into people's pockets. because of several, infractions and indiscipline and what have you. If you can block that, you probably will be taking, maybe the FRS will close this year around 14, 15 trillion.
Are you talking about, okay, because you just said FRS, I imagine that's at the federal level.
I mean, that's just for the federal. So the states, look at what FCT is doing there. When Mr. Wike got into government, and he said, listen, they looked in the books and said, nobody is paying ground rent in this FCT. And all of these mansions everywhere. And the guy said, listen, pay me my money or I seal you or something, or I revoke it. Everybody was clambering over themselves to pay. And the man is going to be tripling his revenue this year, whether they like it or not. And of course, the vice president also charged the governors in the last NEC meeting. They said, listen, look at what this man is doing. Go back to your states and also see what you can do. In all of your GRAs where your friends are living, see what you can do to ensure you get something back from people. But that's as far as the revenue is concerned.
This is in spite of the introduction of a treasury single account.
Yes.
Where
absolutely.
All of government's revenue was supposed to have been paid
trust me, I mean, if you need to pay a tax of 10 million, and I go to you and say, you know what, Mape, give me 2 million, and give me another 2 million for myself. I'm pay that 2 million there. I'm going to do it for you. And you pay 2 million officially to government, or 1 million, or even 500, or nothing. And you give me the cash. And that's what's going on in almost every situation in this country, national, subnational. It's a joke. And we're saying that if you can use technology and intelligence and also use carrot and stick and show some people, to the goal of serious fines, everybody will sit up. That's all we need. We don't need to increase taxes. And I think that's what we've been working on, so far. So to answer your question about what the government is supporting industries. Remember that the campaign document of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu actually spoke about cottage industries in 6 geopolitical zones of this country that will be driven around the products of those places. For example, you go to Benue State, part of Kogi State, part of Niger State, the amount of wastage, in season, post-harvest losses, huge. So what you want to do is maybe cite fruit juice companies in those places to actually quickly use. I remember in 2013, I was in Uganda, and I saw that the students of Makerere University, they built a mobile fruit processing machine and put it behind the truck, and they were driving from village to village, helping them to process those things into fruit juice. I don't know whether those guys can take it to the market, and I think we need some of those kind of things. So yesterday, the president also mentioned some of this thing. He said that, he believes that we should be able to build mega cities and in 6 geopolitical zones under 10 years. He said we should be able to have fully networked rail, gas, fiber optics, and roads cities in 20 years rather than 300 years. That we should be able to finance our infrastructure, $3 trillion worth in 10 years with the private sector collaboration rather than wait for 300 years. And of course, he also mentioned the issue of those industrialization plan of the country and of the government. Now, again, his ambitions are way out. And look, but that's the kind of thing that a Lee Kuan Yew would do in Singapore. We used to be a trading outpost, a fishing village and all of that, but hey, I have a dream. That yesterday was, for me, almost an I have a dream. And like I said earlier, see, sometimes the role of we who are the aides and minions in this is to align behind some of these and also check what we're doing and say, hey, are we feeding the dream and actualizing the dream of this wonderful visionary that's ahead of us? It was a shock. And many of those things were said extempore. A lot of them were not on the speech, because I was watching, when he was speaking, he took his eyes off whatever prompter and all of that, and I was speaking from the heart. And again, he's also informed by the work that they are doing himself, the Central Bank Governor, the Minister of Finance, talking to big financiers around the world. It's an approach. Okay. It's a bit scary, it's an approach, but I think it's doable.
Well, yeah, we'll also talk about how they want to achieve this dream. We'll look at the current figures, the current economic realities compared, and then probably, are they leveraging on that? Is that an indication of where we're going to be headed? So all of that we'll talk about when we return in just a moment. Stay on with us.
Thank you for staying with us. We're still having conversations with a focus on Nigeria's economy with Dr. Tokwe Fashua and Professor Bongo Aide in our Abuja studio. Prof, let me start with you. Good to see you again. But, you know, my focus, you know, perhaps for you to, you know, give some perspectives to is on the president's words by working closely with all of you in the private sector. Collaboration, essentially. Given the lamentations of some associations or bodies in the OPS, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, for instance, crying about a number of things, just lamenting about situations that some of their people have to go through, ease of doing business and those challenges. How significant is this statement of the president saying, without collaboration, it may not be possible? What are the hurdles in the way of collaboration between the government and the private sector to achieving this $1 trillion Nigerian economy that the president mentioned?
Of course, collaboration is key because without it, it's not possible to even achieve a $1 economy, not to talk of a $1 trillion economy. And the president, I think, he is the first to give to the private sector, you know, so what it is that they always want, which is to, in fact, even for the president to appear for the summit, you know, is itself an achievement because I know that in the past, it's always a struggle to get the president in the first year to attend the summit, but he was able to make it. So that is itself an assurance, you know, that has given to the private sector that is willing to collaborate, is willing to work with them. So collaboration is the engine, actually, when you talk about building the economy. Collaboration between the public sector and the private sector needs to happen. These days, you know, but the thing where I have some issues here is that like my friend Dr. Tokwe said here, that the president shifted it further to the right in terms of his ambitious goals, and I like that. If you look at the leading economists today, even in the United States, so yes, I am a pro-market economist in the sense that I like the beauty of the market. I like, you know, the price discovery and all of those, you know, efficiency gains that we achieve when we allow the market to really coordinate things. But at the same time, you notice that for economies, especially when an economy is trapped in a low-level productivity, low-level equilibrium, it is important for government to take the center stage, which is, you know, what is said to, you know, government needs to identify the key sectors and then move in those directions, allocate resources in such a way they create the necessary incentives regarding what they want to achieve in the economy. So the leading technologies we have today, the disruptive technologies that so many firms such as Apple are using to build their global brand and make so much money all over the globe, those are technologies sponsored by public investment in the United States. Whether you are talking about the touchscreen, you know, mechanism that you have on phones and on TVs and everything, all these were government-sponsored, or GPS. It was the American government, not the private sector, that led those, you know, moves, you know, in those days, you know, immediately after the Second World War. And then there is this lady, The Mission Economy, written by Mariana Mazzucato, one of the leading thinkers in that direction. You know, so the mission economy, in fact, what the president gave was an ambitious mission, you know, where the direction he wants to take the economy, where he wants the economy to be. And that is very, very key. The public sector still needs to direct the you know, economic growth, economic development. All right. So without that, it is not possible even for the private sector, because even given the structure of our economy, you realize that government still controls a whole lot of things. Well, capital, maybe 65%. I was speaking to one of my students was also at the summit yesterday. So he was telling me about how he had to shift his business. So he said that when it comes to demand, the demand that comes from the public sector is still very huge. And if you are not serving the public sector in Nigeria, you probably will just be making, marginal gains or marginal returns. So you see that it is necessary for government to take that commanding height of the economy, right? But again, when that happened in the past, but it was maybe misguided, misdirected, and eventually we ended up, the way where we are now. But I think it is something that this administration needs to, that balance.
But Prof,
having governments,
if you can hear me, Prof,
the
perhaps
perhaps
by way of
control certain things. So
making an effort. My apologies. Perhaps by way of making an effort to be a little clearer for people to understand. I'm asking what the hurdles are in the way of, what the president said. You are aware that in the previous administration, they made a big noise, a big deal of what they call the ease of doing business parameters in the country. Now, is that part of what the government is talking about here now? Is ease of doing business part of the hurdles that needs to get out of the way, that we need to tinker with, so that the private sector can adequately and profitably, progressively and sustainably collaborate with government in this new I have a dream statement, according to Dr. Fashua?
Well, ease of doing business has always been there. And I don't think that it is the sole responsibility of the federal system. The states also have the subnationals have their own roles to play. So, and then sometimes you have some kind of conflict. There was a question that came up at the summit yesterday. In conclusion, somebody from Kogi State asked a question regarding the right of way. So, somebody said that, okay, because big companies will bring fiber optics, which has enormous economic benefits in terms of productivity enhancement and all of that. And because of that, states need to, be very flexible in giving them the right of way, and then it shouldn't be taking a long time and then going into very arduous processes. Now, the person asks, but if those rights of ways will be provided at no cost, but those resources that are given actually come at a price to those communities, how do you compensate the communities for all of this? So you can see the way that, the subnationals also relate with all these things.
Okay.
So it's not just about the federal. I think the subnationals also have to think about that when it comes to ease of doing business. But it is not... I don't think it's going to be that easy, because we have had that all the years, starting from the Obasanjo regime through the Jonathan era, through the Buhari. So we've had the presidential ease of doing business, system. But then has the ease of doing business really improved? So what I would be expecting to hear from the government or see them do are the critical steps, that needs to be taken to improve the ease of business that businesses keep complaining about year in, year out.
Good. Which is exactly the question to ask him now. Which is exactly the question to ask him, Prof. So, Dr. Fashua, I speak to that. Thankfully, the previous administration, this whole shebang about the presidential Enabling Business Environment Committee, was a product under the office of the Vice President where you operate now. For you, what are the hurdles to cross? What are the challenges to contend with if we are to get the collaboration right? As I've always said, the federal government has citizens, but the indigents and the residents are in the states, and that is where they feel the pinch. So if we do not have that collaboration between the federal and the state governments, all 36 of them, including the federal capital territory, it's a pipe dream, and it will never see the light of day. What do you think? So how do we cross that hurdle?
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much. You are very right. And as Professor Aide had said also, already the metrics have drilled down to the states. The metrics have drilled down to the states, and each of them have their ratings in terms of how well. In fact, I think I saw something recently. I think, surprisingly, either Kebbi or Kwara, one of them was the best in terms of ease of doing business on a subnational level. However, you know where I'm coming from. I've also written in times past in terms of critiquing the metrics of the ease of doing business. And, you know, some of them, I believe, are a little bit tangential to our system here. For example, out of the 10, the World Bank, this is driven by the World Bank, out of the 10 metrics that are measured, 2 or 3, 4 of them, you know, they're about, I think, a bit tangential. For example, the measures ease of declaring bankruptcy, for example. You know, the Americans, they have Chapter 9 and all of Chapter 11, all of those things. They are very quick to opt out sometimes and start again. Someone like Donald Trump had declared bankruptcy 4 times. He still became the president of the United States. You know, but here it's different. Now, as a growing economy, I cannot even be considered to be an emerging yet. If you say we're emerging, we're just kind of, you know, hyping ourselves, really. What we need is not to have people who come in and then the next year they're trying to declare bankruptcy, you know, or, you know, some other ones that are ease of cross-border business. Now, very few businesses do cross-border businesses. So why are we putting so much weight on cross-border businesses, for example, and so on and so forth? So I advocated that we should probably also develop a Nigeria-centric ease of doing business. For example, a small company can start a business, okay? Opening your company is not a big deal anywhere in the world anymore, including in Nigeria. Getting registered in Corporate Affairs Commission, you can get that done in 1 day or 2 days. In some places, maybe under a few hours, you can get it done. But getting business is where the problem is. So maybe we want to put something like, you know, the several constraints in terms of bidding for businesses in the public sector, even in the private sector, the rigging of some of those processes against smaller companies that are struggling, whether they are qualified or not, you know, usually they are rigged out. Perhaps some sort of affirmative action for small businesses, micro businesses that are just starting on the offer, businesses run by young people who believe that because they haven't been around and gained a lot of goodwill and friendships and network over time, sometimes they start businesses and it doesn't scale because those who are connected are getting all the businesses. So I believe that no matter the problem that one has, and even including the nation, if you can sit and think very, very clearly and honestly about it, you will find a solution. So, but I think the key requirement for that private sector collaboration is part of what the president did yesterday, coming out, honoring the NSG, you know, say, listen, even though it's the first time you're having your meeting since I became president, but I have to create time. And he stayed, you know, he stayed more than an hour in that place, perhaps even more, you know, and gave that very good, inspiring speech. You know, that's part of it. But on the larger scale, Nigeria needs unity. One of the presentation by, I think, one of the ladies, I think the deputy president of the NSG, I said lady, maybe Miriam or Amina, I can't remember her name. Actually, I think Amina, right? Yes, she actually concluded with what she said was probably the most important thing, unity of the country. And so, of course, that takes us to the political realm. And, of course, we're saying that, look, everything must be done to, if everybody is pulling Nigeria in different directions, we're never going to go forward. And the unity of is what will assure whether the private sector and the citizens support for the ambitions of government.
Gentlemen, we need to go. 30 seconds we've got. I hope we can do this. The president's quotas have said, we've achieved the desired objectives for subsidy removal, particularly. I will look into see, wait a minute. So what was the objective then, Dr. Fashua, about the subsidy removal? Because we know the current situation right now.
Okay, yes. I think the more difficult objective that has been achieved, the more difficult
which is what government's making
policy. No, the more difficult policy is actually the floating of the currency. That is what is playing the yo-yo on the price of crude oil. I felt it was scary, but they've come with some ideas about how to balance. And I think if 10 billion moves into the country today, for example, chances are that the naira is going to gain value. Who knows, maybe it's going back to 500.
Okay.
But clearly, in terms of the removal of subsidy, the clear objective is to have a clear line of sight about the finances of the country. So the man wants to know, how much do I have? You can't say NNPC is selling this crude oil, but every time they sell, all the gains are used to finance subsidy. Say, look, remove that. Let me know how much we have in the country. However, I would also challenge us to say that, look, we need to think beyond crude oil. The only assumption on our budget is crude oil and all of that, how much you want to sell. What about the others? What about solid minerals? What about other sectors? We need to plan properly from the ground
So
up.
finally, in terms of your thoughts on that one too, but add to that the current reality about that subsidy removal.
Now, so subsidy or no subsidy is not a problem in the petroleum sector. And we got it even wrong in the PIA deal was passed. Now the PIA Act, Petroleum Industry Act. I was with NNPC senior executives at LBS, came for a program, and we're analyzing one case in the United States. So you can see that the same challenge that we have in the electricity sector, what we have, so we have GENCOs, we have DISCOs, we have transmission that's not capable to serve, to link the two. Now, in the oil and gas sector, you have refining, which is a very low margin business, not profitable at all. So you need, and then in the United States alone, you have an equivalent of 3 refineries added each year. So they have enormous refining capacity, so that each year they keep bringing down the cost, so that even when you build a refinery in Nigeria, it's going to be cheaper for you to import from the United States.
Until you have that critical mass.
You can never get it, by the way, because they control the technology as well. So what we could have done here is to link production, whatever happens in the upstream, to what happens in the downstream. Okay? The people who have interest in the upstream would have interest in the downstream. So that could have removed the incentive, because what we have is an incentive problem.
Would that be tantamount to IOCs operating refineries here?
That's it. That could have removed it. We have an incentive problem. It's not a subsidy problem.
Yeah, but hasn't that happened? Because what the IOCs were complaining about is the fact that government subsidy was making it difficult for them to invest in that sector.
Well, that's what they would say. But again, if you look at refining, I mean the upstream, so you have, so look at the production sharing contract or the joint ventures. So if you see how the revenues, go in which direction, you will see that there are some ways government can give them incentive in the upstream, which they can pass on to the downstream.
All right, Professor Bongo Aide is of Economics and Lagos Business School. He is chairman of the editorial subcommittee of NES 29. We've also had Dr. Tokwe Fashua, special advisor to the president on economic affairs, office of the vice president. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed today.
Thank you.
We will be back in a moment. We've got another interesting session coming through, so stay on with us.